As long as you have faith and I have facts, you will always, always be wrong, and I will always, always be right. Today I wanted to share my deconversion story with you. I'll make it quick. I was a Christian for a long time, for 20 plus years. And during the last year, I came onto YouTube as Infinite Hope. I did videos trying to share with others my feeling of God and get them to know God or experience God. I truly believed in the typical Christian stuff. Trinitarian, Jesus died for my sins, all that sort of big package. When I was doing Infinite Hope, I would get all these questions I didn't know how to answer, and the thing that I felt that the atheists were missing was this experience of God that I'd had. And I didn't want them to miss out. That's a very human need to connect with others and to have them experience what you're experiencing. That's very much a cultural, tribal sort of need that we have in us. And I felt like, there's got to be something. So I finally started listening to what the atheists were asking for. They were asking for empirical evidence or repeatable tests, some way to confirm that something that I was saying was true. And I even heard a Christian one time saying, well, we have all the evidence, they just won't believe it even if we give it to them. And I said, well, let's just give it to them and prove that point. Just prove the point that even with the evidence, they still won't believe. Oh, no, it'd be a waste of time. I was like, oh, no, it wouldn't be. Let's do it anyways. If you're not going to do it, then I'll do it. And I did. I set out to do that. And I explored my religion's history. I found out a lot of information about how the Bible was put together, the places of it, the archaeology that has been done about it, and I found that there was not overwhelming evidence. There was a few places that were right, a few kings that were right, and that was it. And there was a lot of places that were in question, and some that had even been forgeries, and some places that we had to be skeptical of, like Nazareth at the time. There was this whole book on that it might not have been what it claimed to be in the Bible. It wasn't a big town back then. There's disagreements over these places. And so this was a problem. And then there was evidence against a lot of the biblical stories from science and from archaeological finds as well, that there wasn't a worldwide flood, for one example of many. And so all of these sort of problems were things I couldn't just explain away as some giant conspiracy theory or something, which people have done. I was really bothered. I realized that not only was there no real evidence for anything that I believed, but actually there was evidence and arguments against what I believed. So I went to the philosophy. I went to apologetics. I thought, this will be the saving grace. This will make it work even though I don't have the evidence. Maybe we don't need evidence. Maybe all we need is a good argument. So I studied those arguments. I memorized them. I thought, these were great. Oh man, how could anyone not believe in God after hearing this? And then I started learning logic, and the more I understood logic, the less and less the arguments made sense, and in fact I found that all the arguments that I had memorized were wrong. They were not logically coherent. And so now I had this really strange place in my life where the thing that I believed in had no support for it and no argument for it. And could I still believe? And I said basically to myself, okay, I just have faith. That's all I have. It's just pure faith. But I need something. I need something from God just to remind me that He cares about me. And this isn't unreasonable. In fact, recalling a past experience that I had in prayer, I'd ask for a very specific thing, and I would get a very specific thing. It was this sort of sensation that I could get in my body if I asked for it. Well, here I am in desperate need for God to show me that He cares. Since He did it before, He'll do it again. And I asked for it, nothing happened. And this went on for weeks. That I would ask, I would beg, I would cry, I would plead, and nothing would happen. And so I asked Christians that I knew, what's going on? Why isn't God answering my prayer? And I had answers like, oh, well, God did give you an answer, but you just didn't see it. Or God's testing you, or you can't ask God for a sign. And I thought, well, all these answers are ridiculous. I mean, first of all, if God gave you an answer but you didn't see it, then what's the point of Him giving you the answer? I mean, why wouldn't He give you one that you could see? That's nonsense. Why would He test me in this time that I am at the lowest of the low in my life? I am about to lose my faith if I don't get this. Why would He test me now? That's crazy. That's like having your relationship at its breaking point and deciding now is a good time to see if your significant other really does care about you. You know, I mean, now is the time to test them, right? No, now's the worst time to test somebody. And, you know, that you weren't allowed to test God. I'm like, I'm not testing God. He gave it to me in the past. Why won't He give it now? No answer. No answers at all, just excuses. And I realized that the only logical choices were that if there was a God, it didn't care about me or it didn't have enough power to show that it cared. And in either of those two cases, it was not the God that I believed in. And I realized that if I didn't believe in this God, I really didn't believe in any God at all, because this was the only God that I've ever believed in. I've never believed in any of the other 3,000 plus some odd gods that exist out there. In fact, at the time, I didn't know there was that many. I only knew of, maybe a handful, And even those I didn't know anything about. So I couldn't just believe in a different God just for the sake of believing. And wouldn't some other God answer me? Perhaps. Why wouldn't they make themselves known to me? And that's really, how I became a skeptic. I looked at all the evidence, found none. I looked for the logic arguments, found none. And I went straight to the source, and the source wasn't there. Now, I wasn't satisfied with just knowing that I didn't believe. I wanted to understand some of the things that I had experienced. For example, the whole sensation thing. What was that about? Well, I researched this. If you are in a very meditative, deep meditation state, you can tell your brain to produce sensations, and it will. And because I wasn't calm at the time, my body could not produce that sensation. So that's why there was no, quote, answer, unquote, to the prayer, because my body wasn't in the right zone for it. Had I been in a relaxed state, I would have totally gotten that sensation again and thought that that was God. But I wasn't, so I couldn't get it. There was a physical phenomenon as an explanation for what I thought was a supernatural phenomenon. And given that the physical one made more sense than the supernatural one, I went with that. And it really is something important to note that not everyone can experience these things that some would call God. And learning about that was something phenomenally extraordinary to me. I really didn't consider the idea that people couldn't experience this, because our brains are not all the same. And so literally some brains are just unable to ever experience these sort of spiritual sensations unless we inject them with the chemical that's produced that people have produced when they experience these spiritual phenomenon. If we inject people with that same sort of chemical, they will experience it. So that really shows there's a physical explanation for what people call spiritual events. It's all chemicals that your brain produces for its own benefit, for its own amusement. And there's some deep psychological reason for this that goes into subconscious, conscious, back and forth stuff that's really too complex for me to digest. I'm just skimming the surface of these things myself. But there are natural explanations. Is it better to be a skeptic than a believer? I think so. Because now as a skeptic, I can learn anything, and it's not going to bother me. See, as a Christian, there was only certain things I could really learn. I couldn't learn the true history of the Bible. I couldn't learn that it was just assembled by a bunch of anonymous authors that died out centuries ago, that we don't even know who wrote it, in pieces and fragments in different languages and translated. No. I couldn't learn that. I couldn't learn the real history. I had to think that it was, oh yeah, there was somebody that wrote it, and we know who wrote it, and this really simplistic explanation that isn't true. And you'll hear Christian apologetics who have to know better make up these sort of stories about, oh, no, we know it was written by Moses. Oh, so Moses wrote about his own death? Oh, yeah, it makes sense. Okay. But I couldn't learn certain things as a Christian because it would have harmed me emotionally. Now, as a skeptic, I can learn anything. I can investigate objectively, and whatever the truth is, I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me. Now, I want to say that if in my investigations I found God somehow, I would be quite interested in that. I would let people know how I had done it. I would let them know what process I had undergone, because that process would involve the full range of skepticism. It would mean that I had found some empirical, some testable way to show God, and I'd found a logical argument to support it as well, and I'd additionally figured out what that word God means on top of everything else. And that would be interesting. I'd be fine with that. It wouldn't bother me at all. I'd be interested in it. But so far, all I have found is that religions are created by humans, for the sake of humans' misunderstandings, misgivings, and misinformation about how the world really works. As a skeptic, I have a renewed sense of love for science and a desire for learning. And that, I think, comes from giving up mythology. Mythology is interesting, and it's fun to read about, and some of it's more colorful than others. I think Zeus and all those deities have Yahweh beat out. I mean, those gods really knew how to have fun and were actually personable, and they were fun kind of gods. I mean, Hercules was a guy I would like to hang out with. Jesus is kind of boring by comparison, But I'm just saying, look, objectively, you can look at every mythology, and if you enjoy it, fine. But don't believe it, unless there is empirical proof, a repeatable test, or a logically coherent argument. Now, if you have a logically coherent argument, but you don't have the first two things, I would say that it's logically coherent to think it's true, but you might still hold some doubt about it, as logic can't really get us to the truth. Only science can really tell us what reality is about. And there's a place for philosophy, sure. Everything has its proper place in our world. But when you ask somebody a question like, show me God, and they can't do it because God's not a thing we can show, that right there should pretty much knock God out of the equation of things that are real. Same thing with spirits and souls and demons and angels and whatever else you want. It is not a boring world. It is a very interesting world. And it's already complex enough without adding another layer that we can't see of the spiritual realm to it. I think that to posit such an idea would destroy everything that we know. Let's just say I see a branch moving outside, and I go, oh, I wonder, I open the window, but I feel no breeze. And I see it move again, and I'm feeling that there's no breeze. And I go outside, I go next to the tree, no breeze, no animal, no sign of what is making this branch move, but it keeps moving, and I don't know what's making it move. Should I conclude that some spirit is moving it? No, absolutely not. I should investigate it thoroughly to figure out what's going on. And if after all my investigation I still don't know how it's happening, that is my answer. Not, well, it's got to be a ghost. That's never a warranted conclusion. It just can't be. Because we haven't explained what a ghost is. And so, hypothesis X that is unexplained can never be used to explain unknown event Y. It's just that simple. Being a skeptic is different from being a believer. A lot of changes happened for me, but one thing that I think for me is still true is I have a passion to share experience with others. In this case, it's not the experience of God that not everybody can experience, but the experience of asking you to analyze the thing that you hold most dear to you, to question that, whatever that is. If you haven't done that yet, do it, because that's an experience that's worth having. Whatever it is you hold most dear. Maybe you are a skeptic, so what you hold most dear would be the rigors of science and skepticism and logic. And I've done those exercises where I've analyzed what I hold most dear. I've analyzed if logic really functions. I've analyzed whether science can be trusted. And I have found, time and again, that the answer is yes. But it's still a worthwhile exercise. If you're a believer, then it means questioning whatever it is you believe, if that is indeed what you hold most dear. If you don't do it, why not? What could you possibly have to lose? If it's true, then you'll find out the overwhelming evidence for it. If it isn't true, then you'll find that out. And isn't the truth better than not truth? I think so. So that's my story, and those are my thoughts. And maybe you'll share yours. If not, that's fine. And if so, I look forward to hearing it or reading it. And I've got nothing this time. I didn't do any logical stuff, so no numbers or thing that I can say at the end that's really cool to say or anything like that. So I don't know how to end this. I'll just call Outright Lie and I'll talk to him. Hello? Is this Outright Lie? No, it's not! Oh, sorry, wrong number. Wait a minute. Oh, I get it.